Welcome to The Confidence Conversation, hosted by Michelle Beatty. The Confidence Conversation is a series of rich dialogues and insights shared by a variety of professionals in different industries as they unpack their secrets to being confident while sharing the building blocks, career wisdom, and their entrepreneurial journeys. The Confidence Conversation is an expansion of the blog CareerTipper.com.
Welcome back to The Confidence Conversation. I'm your host, Michelle Beatty, creator of CareerTipper.com. In episode 19, I'm chatting about evolving to being your professional best by being tenacious with finance expert Charles Thybulle. He has been in the financial services industry since 1998. Charles graduated from the University of Central Florida. He started as a management trainee in the consumer finance business and was promoted to district manager before making the transition into retail banking in 2010. He has managed multiple branches in Tampa, Memphis, and Atlanta before taking on his current executive role of Financial Wellness Relationship Manager. Charles is a wellness, education advocate that believes in the power of mentorship for his community by volunteering and participating on multiple boards of different organizations. Charles, welcome to the Confidence Conversation.
Hello, Michelle. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a few tips that will hopefully impact not just the people who are listening, but various individuals in the community.
Fabulous. Charles, what was your moment of confirmation that a career in the finance industry was a right fit for you?
Truthfully, I'd have to give take a step back and honestly talk about my career in retail. That lasted about 18 months. I spent a few years in the retail space and, working long hours and not fully utilizing my education background. I was given the opportunity through networking to get into the finance business and took that opportunity and really began the life-changing moment in my career where I would be able to really impact communities, help individuals, and ultimately grow professionally and personally. The networking, as well as honestly just seeking out the opportunity. I was working probably about 70 hours in retail and got pretty tired of it and wasn't really using my mind. So I'd say my networking and really having having the drive to really get out of that industry and put my mind to more use. And the finance area was really what captured my attention.
So what about the finance industry captured your attention?
At the time, it was a very unique opportunity because I'd always thought that being in management and really working with people was my calling. And in this particular case, it was really helping people on the consumer side, providing them with lending solutions to problems that they had, whether that was small loans, larger loans. And so that really piqued my interest because I found out that people from a variety of backgrounds had issues or needed some assistance with their finances because people made a lot of money didn't mean that they kept all of their money. And there are some specific examples that I'll share a little bit later when we kind of circle back to that.
How has your willingness to relocate helped you evolve as your professional best?
That was probably the biggest thing that allowed me to really grow. And not just personally, but professionally more so because I was given the opportunity to get out of, my comfort zone. And when I say that, I was in Tampa. I was doing pretty well as a manager and really wanted to take the next step in my career, which was to really be able to share my expertise and really have an impact on more than just, the 4 to 6 people that I was managing at the time. So there was a couple of different opportunities that presented themselves. One was actually in upstate New York, which luckily for us, I didn't get that opportunity. But there was one that was an ideal fit, and it was actually in the state of Tennessee in Memphis, working for an individual that gave me the opportunity after going through a pretty rigorous interview process. So that and then doing well there gave me another opportunity to move to Atlanta. So from a life experience and really getting out of the state that I was, really raised in Florida, got a chance to experience different cultures, different weather patterns. And so I would say that that was paramount in me learning to appreciate what ultimately became full circle when I came back to actually Tampa, Florida, where I live now. We definitely have a better appreciation for where we are. And I say we, meaning my family, as well, because, Rochelle and the girls, they knew Memphis, which was good. They got a chance to know Atlanta, got a chance to spend time with, their family and their grandmother. And then coming back to Tampa was all kind of surreal because it all really began here.
Awesome. What is the best career advice that you've received?
Ooh, there's a lot. I think the first thing that I would say is, don't make rules if you're not going to follow them. A really strong manager that I had, really set the tone for me. Actually, when I was in Memphis, I had actually gotten a new manager, and we had some specific things that we were going to do, part of our process. And there was a few people who tried to buck the system, and he simply said, "Listen, Charles, either you're going to do it or you're not. And if you're going to have these rules, these are the ways that people have to follow it. And if they're not going to follow it, then they can't be on your team." I mean, so when he gave me that advice, it really helped me grow as a manager and have those tough conversations that aren't always the most comfortable, but it's ultimately the best thing to do. The second thing that I would say that someone told me was, you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And in order for you to grow, you have to stretch beyond what you normally see and do or what you're good at. So in order to be the best or to get better, I mean, you have to really get comfortable being uncomfortable. And one of the things that I would tell anyone when you're talking about best career advice is, life is not just about success. If anything, it's more about failing, and having some brief moments of success. And that's just something that was, kind of told to me recently, working with a couple of business mentors and coaches. And, I can kind of use a sports analogy, for those that could maybe this would hit home. I don't play golf, and golf can be very frustrating for most people. But typically your golfers or people that golf, I mean, they don't have good rounds. They don't have a couple of days. And before they're ready to throw their clubs away, they hit one perfect ball. And it's like, yes, that's what I've been waiting for. So I would say, that whole comfortable being uncomfortable, and really understand, then for you to have and appreciate success, you've got to go through some failures. And the process is never fun to get to where you want to get. But if you, I think a lot of people have heard this saying is, if you start with the end in mind, understanding that this is the end goal, and I've got to go through this process in order to get there.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. You've managed many teams. How has having a tenacious attitude impacted your management style and team's productivity?
Ooh, I mean, there's kind of two ways when I look at, the tenacity that I had. And I'd say probably early on more than later on in my career. But because some people can perceive your tenacity as confidence or being very strict, or, that word that no one likes, micromanaging. But I think when you have a specific goal and you're really focused on it, you've got to give it all that you can. And, I think that permeates and it really spreads throughout teams that you work with. And one of the things that I would attribute that whole tenaciousness is, I'm more than willing, and if anything, happy to kind of lead by example or get my hands dirty. So I've never been one of those managers to just, hey, do what I say. I would much rather show you what I do and you learn how to incorporate the things that work well for me into yours and then ultimately make your own style. So I think that early on was really key for me, but then it also caused a bit of headache because not everybody wants to be managed the same way. And so as I grew as a manager and just as a person and as a man, I've learned that you really got to be able to individualize how you deal with people. And that, I think, comes with maturity, and probably something that a lot of, I would say a lot, but not enough people do is their fair share of reading and really kind of doing some self-reflection on, am I being the best Charles? Michelle may want to be dealt with in this capacity. Well, I've got to adapt to that. Rochelle may want to be dealt with in this capacity. I've got to adapt to that. Jada may want to be dealt with in this capacity. So you've also got to be pretty flexible in understanding it, because people are people. We're not robots. So you as a leader have to be adaptable to others if you want them to be their best.
I think that is spot on. Really brilliant as far as understanding your team. I think that is something that all managers battle with, whether they know it or not. It is a challenge, or a better word would be, it is an ongoing process of development to deal with people and their personalities on their terms. Because I feel oftentimes people in leadership, they may perceive that that the team needs to adapt to them versus them adapting to their team. Not every leader, but I think more than others.
Yeah, I was in an emotional intelligence class yesterday, and we were just kind of talking about that when great leaders put others first, and you have to have this servant type attitude in order for you to really get the best, because when you help people get what they want, you in turn get what you want. And it's not everybody that can do that, but it's pretty unique to think that in business and in life, when you take care of other people, typically your needs are taken care of. And so I think there's some maturity that can go with that, but I'd be lying if, I came up with all this stuff. I've done my fair share of soul searching, in the past, I'd say 18 months. And I definitely attribute it to, my board of directors, some people who I hold closely to me, as well as just a lot of reading. I've read 6 to 8 books in the past 18 months or so. And right now I've got my hand in probably like 4 or 5. Just kind of picking up some nuggets, of information that can be helpful. And so one of the things that my business coach and team challenged me to do is read 15 minutes a day. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't do it. I didn't miss some spots, but I'd say 5 out of 7 days a week. I've read at least for 15 minutes.
I very much appreciate you sharing, one, that you get business coaching as an executive. I think that's key for some people to not only follow through, but be open to the idea of being coached. And then also, I really appreciate the fact that you stress the importance of reading, being the continual learner constantly or continually, because like you said, it might not be a constant thing as far as every day, but most days you take the time to learn something new or reinforce something that you've heard, but you might get a new perception. One of my mentors, business mentors, I heard them share one time that Bill Gates takes reading vacations. And I was like, that's so powerful that he takes time out just to get new information. And I think it's key when people are like, I'm too busy for that, or that's just not where I'm at. Whatever their reason is, I think for those that are coached to be continually successful in business, that's a raised eyebrow moment when they hear another manager or executive or professional share that they don't have time to read.
Yeah, again, in the past 18 months, and it was, again, through some coaching, but one of the things that I've read and done some research on is there's kind of 2 things. The power of association. If you want to be a successful executive, you've got to hang around successful executives. There's I don't know if it's a famous saying, but I've heard it referenced, and really it was, if you want to be a millionaire, well, you've got to hang around millionaires. And it's no different, with reading or anything. the person who you want to become, you've got to be around those like-minded people. You've got to associate with those kind of individuals. And, and Dave Ramsey even talks about it, and this is just in one of the classes that I get a chance to teach. The average millionaire reads one nonfiction book a month. I mean, that's 12 books in a year. And that's the average. Some of them read more. So, not just about, the money portion, but if you're not exposing yourself to different ideas and different ways of thinking or doing, you're going to limit your ability to be the best that you can be.
So true. So true. Awesome. So are you encouraging your team to read?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure they get sick of it, but I mean, anytime, I'm amongst my team members, I mean, we talk about that, and I'm always trying to find some things to share. Like I said, I've read a couple of books that have helped me just become a better man, a better father, and a better, husband. And there was one I read about personalities. There was one I read about finance. There was one that I read about attitudes. There's one that I'm reading now about procrastination, and I know that we'll kind of touch on that, so I'll dig a little bit deeper. But I would think that if someone's not reading, then they're not helping themselves.
And there you have it. There you have it. What is your advice to professionals that are too busy to take time to create and participate in professional development opportunities?
I mean, the term too busy, I think some people don't grasp what they're saying because, we're all busy. No one wakes up and doesn't have anything to do. At least I don't know those people. So I can't, I couldn't say that. So you have to make time. People make time for the things that they want to do. It's no different than if someone says, hey, I want to go to the beach this weekend. You know what they do? They plan, they do act accordingly. If you want to take a vacation, you plan accordingly. And if your professional development is important, then you've got to make time to do it. Now, it's obviously you have to be selective and you have to be very particular because you can get pulled into a variety of things. And I can just be honest and say that when I first moved back to Tampa, one of the things that I said is I was going to get more involved as I got into the retail banking and kind of understood that, you've got to go get business. It doesn't just come to you. So I decided to get myself involved. And before you knew it, I sat on like 6 boards and was running all over the place. And so I had to take a step back. And, over the past couple of years, I've been very selective. I've had to eliminate some board spots. But I would say that term too busy, it's all relative. If you want to grow, then you're going to make the time to grow. If you don't want to grow, then you won't make the time. But we all make time for things that we prioritize. I'm a big football fan. So you know what? I know that on Saturdays, I'm going to go to a game. Well, you know what? That means from, Sunday through Friday night, I've got to get all this other stuff done because Saturdays, I want to go watch a football game or I want to go to a football game. So we all prioritize. And I think, for me and most successful people, they prioritize and they don't compromise those things. For me and my family, or I say for me, I live by 3 F's in a specific order. And it's faith, family, and fun. Working with my business coach and mentors, I've added a few things. And there's probably 2 things that I would add to that. It's finances / money, and not just about the money, but what's the financial landscape of our family and how are we planning accordingly, to live life in a different way. And I'd say that honesty is probably another one of the things that at the core of both myself and I would say my wife, nothing peeves us more than being lied to. So I say all that because you have to look at who do I want to be? And when I say want to be, not who I ought to be or what other people are telling you, but who do I really want to be? And so that term too busy, I don't get it. We're all busy. But when you really want something, you find a way to get it done. And I think, being any type of professional, no matter what you want to do, if there's opportunities for you to grow and stretch beyond, what you're normally doing, then do that. If you want to grow as an individual and a professional, then you've got to put yourself in some different situations. So kind of going back to the comment I made earlier, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And when you're constantly uncomfortable, that means you're constantly growing.
What motivates you to accomplish your definition of career greatness?
That's a loaded question.
Okay, so what is your definition of career greatness?
I mean, truthfully, there's a certain amount of confidence that you have to have in yourself. And for me, I've never had a problem with confidence because my mom always raised me, and she just said, listen, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is going to. And I say that because greatness for everybody else is different, but we are all meant to be great. And I don't take that part lightly. And I won't get too biblical or religious, but we were all born with a purpose. And so when you break everything down and make it simple, that definition of greatness is in you. And you have to be able to define that for you as an individual. So for Charles, and for me, it's about work-life balance, because it can't all just be work and it all can't just be play. And so for Charles, career greatness is being able to enjoy the fruits of my labor with my family, because I can't just be all work. And again, I've done that. I almost missed my oldest daughter walking because I was working too much. And I'll share just a little personal story about one of the managers who really helped me. It was the first Halloween for my oldest daughter, and I had made plans to travel to Mississippi. We were living in Memphis, and it was about a 3-hour drive. So plans were already made. Wife was okay with it, and it was Halloween day. So I drive all the way down to Mississippi. I had driven 3 hours, and so I get to the office, and I'm, kind of doing some things, working with the team, and I call my manager, and he's like, "Hey, Charles, how you doing?" And we're having a little conversation. He's like, "Hey, where are you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm in Mississippi." He was like, "Why?" I'm like, "Well, this is the week, and this is on my schedule, so I'm going to be in Mississippi." He was like, "But today's Halloween." I was like, "I know." He was like, "Charles, pack up your car and go home. You can go to Mississippi the following day." And I never forget that, because prior to that, my previous manager, it was my anniversary. No, it was Valentine's Day. And our local corporate office was in Nashville, which was 3 hours away. He had us all drive to Nashville, and we were in a meeting until like 6:00 on Valentine's Day. So you talk about two extremes, and one understanding people and the other one really being driven by numbers. And so when I talk about career greatness, you have to be able to enjoy it. And you have a limited amount of time with your family. I mean, you're at work all the time. So work hard, play hard is one of the things that I really try to impose upon myself and people I work with, where it's not all about work. At the end of the day, it's not.
I think that's maturity. And I also think that is just, like you said, choosing who you want to be, not who you ought to be. I think it's just a reiteration of that point that you made previously. It's about, what do you stand for? Something that I'm always asking people, what is your career legacy? What do you want to impart into people? How do you perceive and process what's said to you and about you, and how you respond to it? So, yeah, I understand that. That makes a lot of sense.
Happy that it does.
Mm-hmm. Please share a few best practices that have contributed to you having career longevity in the finance industry.
Wow. Adaptability is probably the first thing. I mean, finance specifically, is constantly changing, very heavily regulated. So you've got to be an advocate for change, understand that it's going to happen, and you've almost got to run towards it. So it takes a little bit of kind of understanding the dynamics of your industry and specifically in around finances. Okay, well, what's the next 3 to 5 years going to look like? And so as I have conversations with CFOs, HR directors, CEOs, and even working internally, there's always a 3 to 5 year plan. So you've got to do a lot of forecasting and forward thinking and really seeing a much bigger picture. Those two things for sure. I would say the whole relocation, it opened up some eyes and again made me have a better appreciation for where I am today. So I think that was big, being able to just experience different cultures. The 3 cities that, I've grown up in from a career standpoint are completely different than where I grew up my childhood. So, and I visited different places. We did our fair share of travel when we were early in our marriage. So being exposed to different markets and areas was definitely helpful. I think another thing is, and I don't think that you can take this lightly, but you've got to have people that are going to be honest with you in your life. And some people will call them a board of directors. Some people call them mentors. And I'll share something about mentors and mentees. It's not something that you force. It typically happens naturally. And, one of the mentors who I look to right now, he was actually a client of mine. And, both of our wives were teachers, and he was a retired person from the city. And so he did pretty well for himself. And so I just, I found a way to befriend him, and, we still talk today. And, he's definitely connected me with a few individuals who I wouldn't have met had it not been for him. A CEO who I would call a good friend from a competitor of ours, in the banking industry. So I think having people that are going to be honest with you and that you can have real conversations with, that to me will ultimately help you, because people who are going to be your accountability partners, or they're going to share feedback with you, good or bad or indifferent, that's always helpful. And, I was sharing in our class that I've got some pretty good relationships and went through a situation where I upset some people who I was working with. This coworker of mine, accountability partner, shared it with me. And then these individuals later came to me and said that I did upset them, but at the end of the day, they saw what I was trying to do afterwards. So I think that those things are really key to having, success and longevity, specifically in the finance industry, because it's ever changing. And one thing that I would say has had a huge impact on me is always remembering that you have one time to make a first impression. You never know who you're going to run into and the impact that person can have, positive or negative. So put a smile on your face. I was reading a book called The Magic of Thinking Big, and there was a couple of things that it talked about as far as displaying confidence, and smiling was just one of the things that really stood out to me, because it doesn't cost anything, and who doesn't smile back at you when you smile at them? So I think attitude is definitely something that's going to be up there as well, because that's the one thing that you can control. You can't control other people. You shouldn't try to control other people. But if I look at myself first and make sure that I understand what other people want and how I can help them get there, so that servant attitude that I talked about earlier, when you put people first, good things are going to happen. And so that's going to create some longevity, and you learn how to deal with people, because no matter what industry you're in, if you know how to deal with people and help them, you will always have success, either in transitioning, finding the right career, or making your own, starting your own company. People at the end of the day, they just want to be heard. And being a good listener is definitely the last thing that I would leave you with as far as creating some longevity, because the sweetest sound to one's ear is our voice.
Very true. What are key points? Well, I guess better yet, what has made you successful in building trust with your clients and your customers? Because banking is no joke. Your people are bringing their money to you. You know, this is their future. This is their children's college funds. This is their home. Like, their dreams are wrapped up in their finances. How do you build trust?
I mean, I keep their needs and wants at the center of everything that we talk about. And a couple of things that I try to do is I try to identify what is it that they really want. And we have to have realistic conversations. And one of the things that I always tell a client whenever, we're interacting with each other is, now I've got to be upfront and ask you, are you looking for like just a bank account, or are you looking for a banker? And let me explain the difference. A bank account, listen, you can go to any of 18, 25, 100 banks and get a bank account. But a banker, we're going to have some different conversations. And sometimes, based on the goals that you told me, that you tell me at the beginning, if you are coming to me and you are going off track, then I've got to have a straightforward conversation with you. And so sometimes our conversations are going to be pleasant because we're going to be on the same page based on your initial goals, assuming none of them have changed. But then sometimes the conversation is I'm not going to make you happy because I'm saying, hey, that's not in accordance of the plan that we set forth. Now, if there's some changes, then we adjust, and that's fine. And so I try to lay the groundwork that, listen, this is a two-way street. We've got to work together. This is not you telling me what to do, and I'm not telling you what to do. I'm going to give you some advice and put you in the best situation, and ultimately you're going to make the most informed decision. So I think that honesty and really keeping the customer at the center of our interaction is going to be key. Because no one expects you to be perfect. No one wants to be lied to. I've made mistakes, and the first thing that I do is I just fess up and I tell them, listen, I made a mistake. I apologize. Let's move forward and let me try to fix it. And I think that honesty with most customers, if anything, it's kept people in tune with me. And there's clients who I still keep in contact with, and it's when they have little needs, as I, transition from being a branch manager to my current role, there are some clients who I still keep in contact with, and when they needed something, I did everything in my power to help them. And so they appreciated that. I remember one client had moved to California, and our banking institution is not in California. And she had a situation that she needed some help with. And she called on me. I told her to give me, some time. And because of the relationships that I had built, both internally, externally, we were able to help this young lady with a pretty unique situation. And she was in a completely different time zone on the other side of the country. And, we still keep in contact. And I think that those are the things that have allowed me to build trust, because I've always been pretty honest with people. And really, it was about what they wanted. And my job was simply to facilitate the things that we could do. And if I couldn't do it, then I told them, like, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
What's the most worthwhile sacrifice that you've made that specifically impacted your career?
Well, I mean, I'd say there's a couple of different ways that I can answer that, because prior to retail banking, there were some sacrifices that I made. And in retail banking, there's some sacrifices I've made. So I'll try to give you two different examples. I'd say that in my previous world of outside of retail banking, when I was in the consumer finance business, it was really admitting that I needed to work on my people skills. So I was vulnerable. And never forget taking a Dale Carnegie class, because my manager said, hey, Charles, you got some things you got to work on, and, you can't be the best that you can be without doing this. So that was kind of the first step. And the second one was not being afraid to fail. And what I mean by that is, we had a process in place with one of my, with my manager at the time. And he said, well, Charles, here's how we normally do it. I was like, no, well, this is the way I've always done it. And he said, okay, we're going to try it your way. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to fix it. And so talk about sacrificing. in my previous life, and I gave you two little examples. I'd say the biggest sacrifice that I made was uprooting my family. I mean, my wife was 8 months pregnant, and kind of going through this interview process and house painted. I mean, we are ready to have our firstborn, and I get a phone call on a Friday that says, Charles, hey, you know what? Congratulations, you're getting promoted, and we've got to move you to Memphis, Tennessee. We didn't know anybody. We had no family in Memphis, Tennessee. It was Charles and Rochelle about to have a newborn, and from a growth and I'd say from a growth standpoint, I mean, just mentally and being able to see something completely different, that sacrifice, I mean, it definitely was a huge one, because here we are. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere. The closest family member for us is, I don't know, I think 9 hours away in Atlanta at the time. You know, they couldn't just get up on a flight. So that was the biggest, you know, sacrifice that I made. And I'd say that, you know, getting into retail banking, the biggest sacrifice that I made was about time. And when I say time, I told you at one point that I was involved in about 6 different organizations, and I'd have to be truthful and just thank God that my wife, you know, loves me enough to have put up with all that craziness, because that was a pretty crazy time. I mean, I'd be home for an hour or two, barely see my girls, and obviously, you know, we had some time, but I was working weekends, so it was a lot in those first couple of years when I transitioned to retail banking. So the sacrifice of time in the second part of my career, and then in the first part of my career, I would say that uprooting my family, not just once but twice within a 3-year time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, it was one was right before a child was born, and the other was right after one was born, and moved to 2 completely different cities.
Okay. Please share your definition of a quality life.
A quality of life for me would be, I can wake up every morning and I can go to bed at night knowing that I gave my all, and I have put my family in a better position than they were in. Whether that means spending 15 minutes listening to my oldest daughter talk, letting my wife have her time with me, watching my youngest daughter do gymnastics, you know, all those little things. But when I wake up in the morning, and when I go to bed at night, I've got to be able to sleep good. And I would honestly say that I don't have a problem sleeping, because I give it as much as I can. I give all I can throughout the day, and at the end, I should be able to sleep good. And I do. Agreed.
How has mentoring and volunteering added depth to your professional footprint in the community?
I mean, you can't put a price on that. I mean, it's really difficult to try to quantify what that means, because it takes a lot. I mean, you talk about mentoring and really taking the time to teach someone some things that they may be lacking. You know, volunteering, sitting on boards. I mean, that's stretching, but really giving of yourself and of your time, because that's time that you don't get back, and that's time away from your family. One of the things that an old CEO who I had some interaction with told me, when you're looking at boards and getting involved in mentoring, she told me that when you're looking at getting yourself involved in any board or organization, a couple of things that you have to consider. And the 2 biggest ones is this helping you and your family as well as the organization, which means it can't just be all about the organization. You have to stand to benefit from it, and your family does too. And I hate to say it like in a crass kind of mean way if it's coming off that way. That's not my intention, but I think that you can get pulled in so many different directions, and you can't be an effective board member. So if you're going to give your time, your family has to see the value in it in some way, shape, or form. And I don't mean just monetarily, but they've got to be able to grow and see some things. So I say that is pretty difficult to quantify because you don't always see it today. The board that I sat on in, 2011 has become a better board because we laid the foundation. And I say we because it wasn't just me. There was 5 other board members who had to put in the blood, sweat, and tears, to raise funds for an organization. And sometimes it's hard to not being able to see an immediate result from your efforts, but knowing that I've laid the groundwork and I put a foundation, so now you can start to build your house. That is priceless. And so when you look at all of those aspects, when I am in the community or out and about and people can walk up to me and say, hey, Mr. Thybulle, or hey, Charles, I saw you here, or man, what you did with this organization that helped sponsor a child to do this or provided a scholarship for this. All those different things. So it's that type of depth is not something you're not going to get by being selfish. So you've got to give a little bit. And as I said earlier, you kind of have to have this servant attitude that if I help people get what they want, I in turn will get what I want without making it so obvious or not even thinking about that. But truthfully, and I've always thought of myself in this way, is my job is to help people get what they want. Period. Whether that's personally, whether that's professionally, monetarily, but I want to be someone that when people come to and they say, Charles, we want to do this, then I'm going to help you get it.
I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Charles, I appreciate you joining the Confidence Conversation. Thank you so very much. I want to end this episode of the Confidence Conversation with this affirmation. I am an image of success that continues to evolve to be my professional best. Charles, please share how listeners can get in touch with you.
A couple of ways. I'm pretty transparent. My email address is ctyb as in boy, ULL @yahoo.com. They can always reach me on my cell phone. If I don't pick up, just leave me a voicemail. And that number is 813-787-5907. And I've got to say, Michelle, I'm really excited and thankful that you've given me an opportunity to really share what I've experienced to really help others. And I hope that this impacts at least one person, because at the end of the day, our job on earth is to make it a better place. And if I can share information that's going to help at least one person, then I've done part of my purpose on this short time we have in this place called Earth.
Well, high five.
Thank you. Have a great one.
And you can find me, Michelle Beatty, at careertipper.com and on Instagram at careertipper. I'm excited to share that my book, Confidently You, 21-Day Action Plan to Your Professional Best, is available for pre-order at confidentlyu.co. Listeners, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Confidence Conversation. We are grateful for our listeners and guests. For more career confidence motivation, resources, and to share your comments and feedback about this episode and share future guest suggestions, visit careertipper.com. Until next time, be career confident.